This is John Costa, and we're at the Lightbox at LCB Depot, and it's the fake news exhibition that's on till next week. And so I'm going to go around and have a look at some of the pieces, but I want to talk to some of the artists as well. So we've managed to catch up with Andrew. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Now you've got two pieces, haven't you? You've got this fascinating piece over here, which I can't wait to talk to you about because it's absolutely genius. But we'll start with your piece here with the famous inflatable Trump baby. So how did you come up with the concept of what you've done?
Well, I mean, the concept came first that it was about kind of how if art hangs around long enough, it kind of becomes a primary source of evidence for history. And I kind of did a lot of research into like primary and secondary sources and kind of where the boundary is, and it kind of becomes this interesting thing that like they're not mutually exclusive. You can have something that is a historical piece of evidence, and from an academic perspective is a historical piece, but it can be a diary entry that someone was just kind of writing, and that kind of pushes it into the secondary evidence thing, which is like, that's kind of where we are with fake news, that everything's kind of secondary evidence, that we've stopped thinking about like what's actually real and what's just someone talking about something that they say is actually real. So the idea was that like there's paintings and things, and we kind of like we look at things like a painting of Jesus. We all kind of assume that's what he looked like, and most of them were painted hundreds of years after it supposedly happened. They've all been tweaked. The further away it gets, the more kind of idealistic things get. So the idea was to do that about a current event, and I actually I waited as long as I could because I wanted it to be as close to the exhibition as possible. So it's something that kind of feels very now. But then a brilliant thing happened. Someone decided to make a giant inflatable Trump baby.
And it was too much of a gift.
And have it to protest Trump. So my idea was to kind of like, you jump forward a couple of hundred years, write a story of like someone getting these things wrong and mixing them together, and then the painting that they would create. So it's a bit of a time travelling piece.
And you talk about things like Brexodus and things like that, and the sort of the Battle of London and
mutism, mutantism, and that was it. It was just kind of like you could take these like, if you were talking about something that happened 200 years ago, you'd kind of have an idea of what was going on. Like you'd be able to maybe get some photos of something, and it'd be kind of grainy and a bit blurry, and you wouldn't have the whole picture. So this was kind of that, but jumping forward 200 years and then looking back. So we have too much information, but imagine if we didn't. Like how kind of blurry would the lines get? So the fact that Westminster's being refurbished right now, kind of throw that in the pot. Go, no, there was a giant in Parliament Square. There was this like global threat that appeared at the same time, and just mash them all together and get it wrong.
And I wonder how much of history is actually not too far off of what you've just described.
We really don't know like how much is just kind of a blurring of the lines, and not necessarily on purpose, like purely through accident. But yeah, you kind of wonder like how like we've got so much stuff, and then like the fact that this is all made digitally and like completely just. It's mashed up from loads of photos.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love the dummy.
Fact that you can do that.
The dummy as well, I think.
Well, this is it, but it starts to kind of. It's a bit self-fulfilling that the fact that you can manipulate an image so much, it's like further away you get from that. Like, when does that become evidence? Like, you've got so much real stuff, but so much fake stuff. Like, it doesn't really help that we have more because we just have more noise.
Yeah. Which brings us nicely onto this piece here, which when you watch it looks like standard News 24, and then when you watch it, it looks like you've just cut together all the bits where the people are silent. So, tell us a little bit about this. Is it like a slow news morning, or?
Yeah, it's called No News Day, and I love BBC Breakfast. I watch it every morning, but I got obsessed with kind of watching the other newsreader when one of them talks, because they're just waiting their turn to talk. They're looking at kind of their script that's on an auto cue and just waiting for their line. So yeah, I got a bit obsessed with what would it be like if you just paired those together and just had this kind of endless line of nothing really happening. And it started to it made me think about 24-hour news cycles and how you're just desperate for content now. And there's not just one 24-hour news channel. There's like countless. They've been going since the 80s, and it makes you think like how much it's changed the way we do news to just kind of fill airtime. And like the thing I can't stand about news is when news reports like entertainment, and even sport to a certain extent. Like you can do 20 minutes on sport, and it's like that's great, but it is just entertainment, really. But on a 24-hour news cycle, like that fills up some time. It means they kind of have to do a bit less work somewhere else. And yeah, so like this is kind of like, what if there was no news? Like, what would you do with 24-hour news with no news? And kind of go to the other extreme and just report nothing.
Just on a purely personal note, how long did it take you to put it together?
Quite a while. It was like on and off. It's about 4 or 5 days worth of BBC breakfast kind of pieced together to about 10 minutes. The tricky thing is, like, they do actually talk a lot, so finding these bits that are kind of small in between and then piecing them together means I'm kind of working with 10-second pieces to make about 10 minutes of footage, so it took probably 2 months. Not constant, but...
Brilliant. It absolutely fried my brain when I came in the other day, because I suddenly realised that nobody was talking. And then it just seems so surreal and odd, and some of the pauses are probably something that we don't really have much on television anymore, which is silence. You know?
And the other thing that kind of I really wanted to get in there was just this random stock footage that, like, because I am a bit of a news geek, you see the same stock footage over and over. Like the second anyone mentions obesity, it's like the same obesity footage they've been using for 5 years of just like, here's a fat person, let's film them in public. It's like someone had that job once, quite a while ago, to just go out and film people's waists. And yeah, they're still using it. And like NHS waiting rooms, there's still like the same bits of footage, NHS waiting rooms. So yeah, it was kind of like playing with that, and that's kind of the stuff that's interspersed is just generic stuff. I mean, a lot of it is actually direct from the broadcast. And yeah, without context, it's generic footage.
Genius. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks.